Why choose this as our goal? And they may well ask, why climb the highest mountain? Why, 35 years ago, fly the Atlantic? Why does Rice play Texas? We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
Hi again then guys, and welcome to my 9th pick out of my top 30 selection of my dream cars basically for a future Gran Turismo game. And as you'll have seen from the intro of the video, this is not an obscure car by any means. Many of the cars in this series are fairly obscure. This car though is pretty well known, to say the least, among petrol heads, especially among fans of supercars. And it's a surprisingly controversial car, I would say. And to be fair, it's not really controversial for any good reason. People just love to hate it. In fact, of all the supercars that I can think of, this is probably the one that people love to hate more than all others. Because this car is very commonly misconstrued as nothing more than a modified Lotus. That is a misconception. And it's a misconception that people not only do believe, for the most part, but one which they want to believe, which makes them all the more likely to believe it, despite the fact that it is quite simply false. The actual fact is that the Hennessey Venom GT only has the doors and roof from a Lotus. Everything else is custom. So to say that this is nothing more than a modified Lotus shows exactly how much of a petrolhead those people really are, and how much knowledge of important things, more than just opinions, they actually have. To say that it is nothing more than a modified Lotus is like saying that a Dodge Charger is a modified Camaro. It's just as unrealistic. They may both have 4 wheels, steering wheel, an engine and some seats, but that doesn't make them the same car. Likewise, the fact that it has the doors and roof from a Lotus does not make the Hennessey Venom GT a modified Lotus. That's a ridiculous comparison. The Maserati MC12, for instance, has the same chassis, engine, steering wheel, and even windscreen of a Ferrari Enzo. That doesn't mean that it is one. It doesn't mean that it's a modified Enzo. It's not. It's a completely different car, as I mentioned in my video covering that model in this very same series. And as you can probably tell, I feel quite strongly on this matter. And it's not particularly because the Hennessey Venom is one of my all-time favourite cars. It would probably be in my top 25 favourite cars, but it wouldn't necessarily be in my top 10, certainly wouldn't be in my top 5. The reason why I don't like people misconstruing this car is the same reason that I don't like people misconstruing any car. It just doesn't deserve that. It's a fine piece of engineering, and the reason why people like to hate on it is purely because they don't want it to be as good as it unarguably is. This car's performance is not up for debate. It's a Guinness verified vehicle. So the fact that people don't like that is tough. Get over it. It is faster than a Veyron. It is faster than pretty much any Koenigsegg. The jury's still out on the 1.1. I know a lot of people would say that it is faster, and yes, the Koenigsegg 1.1 does have 1 horsepower per kilo, and they make a very big deal out of that. Oh, it's got 1 horsepower for every kilo of weight. So does the Hennessey, but they don't make a big deal about it. 1 horsepower per kilo isn't that impressive, because at the end of the day, having 1 horsepower per kilo just means that you have to match the power to the weight. That doesn't automatically make it a good car. You could have a 10-ton truck that has 10,000 horsepower. That doesn't make it an impressive performance machine, it just means that the power is the same as the weight. Likewise with the Koenigsegg. Yes, it has 1,340 odd horsepower, but it also weighs 1,340 kilos, which isn't particularly good for a supercar, especially when you compare that to the Hennessey's 1,244 kilos and 1,244 horsepower. So yes, the Koenigsegg does have 1 horsepower per kilo, but so does the Hennessey, and the Hennessey is lighter. Now it's also less powerful, but having that much less weight to deal with, roughly 100 kilos less, makes up more than enough of having 100 horsepower less as well, because having that less weight to deal with doesn't necessarily have a massive effect on top speed, but it does have a bigger effect on acceleration, especially low-end acceleration. Now the Hennessey is very easy to classify as a tuner car. Technically speaking, it's not. It's made from parts of other vehicles. It uses an LS engine, which is essentially a Corvette engine, but very, very heavily modified. A 7-litre V8, mid-mounted, rear-wheel drive, twin-turbocharged. And it produces, as I said, 1,244 horsepower, and it also puts out a pretty insane 1,155 foot-pounds of torque. That goes through a 6-speed manual gearbox, and it can do 270 miles per hour. It's been officially verified at just over 270. It can go from 0 to 228 miles per hour in less than 20 seconds. To put that into perspective, the Veyron does 0 to 200 in around 20. So the Hennessey can literally go 28 miles per hour quicker than the Veyron in less time. Now that still doesn't make the Hennessey Venom GT the fastest production vehicle ever made. It's quite simply not. It is the fastest accelerating mass production car, if mass production is technically what the Hennessey is, although it's not really a mass production car. It is production though. The fastest production vehicle ever is a motorbike. It's actually my favourite motorbike, the MTT Y2K. 17 were built, and it does 0 to 229 in 15 seconds. So, another 5 seconds quicker than the Hennessey. For a car, though, the Hennessey is remarkably quick. To be that much quicker than a Veyron really is saying something. And yet, people still love to hate on it. Now, the fact that Gran Turismo doesn't have this car does surprise me, because Gran Turismo, they are bigoted to some degree, Polyphony. They are clearly bigoted against cars that aren't Japanese. There are cars which aren't Japanese that are good, before you jump on my head about that, but the majority, the vast majority of the best cars in the Gran Turismo series are Japanese. And you could say, well, yeah, I'm sure that any country that makes a game would do the same thing. Well, no, that's just not the case, because Forza is American, and the American cars aren't necessarily the best in the game. The Veyron is good, the Hennessey is good, even the GTR from Japan is good. They acknowledge that, but they don't make vehicles which shouldn't be as good as they are too good. In fact, as much as Gran Turismo players love to hate on Forza, the top speeds on Forza and the acceleration times are actually far more realistic. It's very difficult, up until the games that I've played on Forza, to make a car exceed around 275. That's realistic, because that's in a modified Veyron Supersport, or an SSC Ultimate Aero, or a Venom GT. On Gran Turismo, 275 doesn't even get you into the club. Literally a Mercedes saloon can do that on Gran Turismo. So, if you're talking realism, Gran Turismo just doesn't have it as far as speed, but most people know that by now. The Hennessey on Gran Turismo would be insanely good. It has 1,244 horsepower anyway, so if you compare that to the kind of cars which are already on the game with that kind of spec, that puts it pretty much head-on against the Huayra, which is generally accepted as being pretty much the fastest all-round car in the game. Street car, that is. Comparing it to the Nismo does have a superior top speed, but the acceleration's not quite as quick as the Huayra. The Veyron can be, but it's very difficult to make that quick, especially top end. And other vehicles like the Vipers and the Cadillac Cian and the TZ3 can come close, but still not quite as quick for an all-round package of full range acceleration and top speed that the Huayra has. If the Hennessey was on the game, it would absolutely destroy the Huayra. I have no doubt about that. It has Huayra specs anyway. It doesn't weigh as little as the Huayra when fully tuned, but if you could tune the Hennessey on the game, you would absolutely destroy every other supercar on Gran Turismo. It would easily beat the Veyron, easily beat the TZ3, most probably beat the Huayra, and I would say most probably beat the GTR Nismo. I think that the car, like the Hennessey Venom GT, or specifically the Hennessey because that is the car in the video, could be made potentially, I think, to have a cruising speed with the right tuning, and if we were allowed to give it upgrades to, say, 1300 or 1400 horsepower, which isn't too unrealistic for the Hennessey Venom, considering that Hennessey recently made a special edition version for the SEMA Motor Show, which had 1500 horsepower. So that's not unrealistic for the Hennessey, it can do that. So if we were to be able to tune it up to that level, I think you could quite easily get it to have a cruising speed of over 310. Probably 315, maybe even 320 under its own power. That wouldn't surprise me at all. With NOS, you could easily get it around 330, 340, if not more. With Slipstream, who knows? As far as handling, well, it's hard to say on Gran Turismo. Some cars turn out to be better than they should be. Some cars turn out to be not quite as good. As far as the Hennessey goes, most of the games that feature it, predominantly Forza, do recognise that it's not the best handling of cars, but at the end of the day it's not designed for that. It's not designed to break lap records, it's designed to be a ballistic straight line machine. So the handling would probably be a little light on the front end, to say the least. But there are other cars already like that on the game, and we can fix that with tuning. As far as the kind of spec that it would probably have on the game, I would personally expect its PP to be somewhere in the region, stock of course, of maybe 680, possibly even more stock. Because if you think about it, 1244 kilos, 1244 horsepower, even though that's in its stock form, that still exceeds most of the other supercars in the game. So it may even be close to 700 pp anyway. Fully tuned, who knows how high the PP could be, maybe even 750. Based on the cars that are on the game. As far as price, I think the Hennessey Venom GT would be a car that would probably cost somewhere between 1 and 2 million credits. 1 million credits would seem appropriate. 2 million would put it head on against the Veyron, which would still be appropriate. Maybe 1.5. 1.55 million credits sounds about right for the Hennessey Venom, and potentially it could make a very good track car as well, especially if it were given a weight loss package and you reduce the power a little bit. So at the end of the day, it's a car which everyone knows about in the petrolhead community. A lot of people love to hate, but potentially were it on Gran Turismo, it could be absolutely insane, but no surprises there. Now, as far as how likely it is to get into a game, because that is of course something I like to talk about with these suggestions, or with these wish list picks, I think there is a pretty good chance, actually, of the Hennessey making it into a Gran Turismo game. Maybe not GT Sport. I don't think it will be on GT Sport. I hope I'm wrong, but I don't think it will be. That doesn't seem the right kind of game to have it on, because it's not really a competition vehicle. Gran Turismo 7, I think, is quite likely. I think there's a pretty good chance. I would say maybe a 60 to 70% chance of the Hennessey making it onto Gran Turismo 7, or at least some future Gran Turismo game, but probably Gran Turismo 7. So, that's it for this particular pick, and if you are new to these videos, be sure to slap down below what cars you'd think you would like to see. What cars do you think definitely will be on GT Sport or GT7? What cars would you personally like to see but maybe are doubtful of? The majority of the cars in my series I would honestly be doubtful of, but it's just to discuss them because they're cool cars. And for those of you who have watched these videos before and already put the cars that you'd like to see, here's another question for you. What tracks would you like to see on the game? What racing circuits? Maybe not just circuits, maybe environments, like salt flats or a gymkhana course. Slap that down below, I'd love to read that. But for now, as always, thanks for watching.